I was the one holding my family together, financially, emotionally, quietly, until the Christmas they left me behind on a trip I paid for. That's when I realized I wasn't part of their love. I was part of their plan. What started as heartbreak turned into a dark trail of identity theft, money laundering, and a secret my father tried to expose before he died. My mother, my stepfather, even my brother, they weren't just toxic. They were criminal. This is the true story of how I uncovered the truth, lost everything I thought was family, and found myself again. If you've ever felt invisible in your own home, this story is for you. The worst kind of loneliness is not being alone. It's being surrounded by people who make you feel invisible. I learned that truth not in a moment of heartbreak or betrayal, but in the most ordinary place. My own kitchen, on a cold December morning in Boston. It was 6:13 a.m. The coffee machine clicked and whirred, spilling dark liquid into my favorite mug navy blue, chipped on the handle, with "Data is beautiful" written in white font. The kitchen window had fogged from the heat inside against the frost outside, and the silence wrapped around me like a second skin. Not comforting, not warm, just there. I sat at the small counter, laptop open, Excel dashboards glowing. Another day, another data set. Numbers made sense to me. They never lied. Unlike people. I was 38, a data analyst for a mid-sized consulting firm. Not glamorous, not tragic, just steady, controlled. After Dad died 6 years ago in what the police called an unfortunate accident, I became the unofficial head of the Bennett household. Not because I wanted to be, because no one else would. Mom Catherine was the kind of woman who wore pearl earrings to bed and cried only when she was being watched. Cold, distant, calculated. My stepfather, Victor, was charm on the surface and shadow underneath. Always well-dressed, always half a glass of scotch in hand. And Nathan, my younger brother, he was the golden boy who never grew up. Emotionally spoon-fed, irresponsible, manipulative when needed. And me? I was the ATM with a pulse. You'd think I'd resent them. The truth is, I just wanted to belong, to be seen, really seen. Maybe that's why I booked the Silver Pines Lodge for Christmas that year. A luxury cabin tucked in the snowy mountains of Vermont, with fireplaces, live piano music, and gingerbread cookies that melted on your tongue. I imagined us sitting by the fire, sharing stories, healing what had been quietly breaking for years. It cost me 2 months' salary, but I didn't care. It was an investment in hope. I sent them the itinerary, personalized notes, even packed small gifts. Ethan, my boyfriend, had warned me gently, "Liv, don't expect too much. You've been disappointed before." I smiled at him. It's Christmas. Maybe this time. The day before we were supposed to leave, I stayed late at work to finish a report. When I got home, the house was dark. No note, no bags, no noise. At first, I thought they'd gone to the store. Then I checked my messages. Nothing. I called Nathan. He picked up on the second ring. "Hey, what's up? Where are you?" "Oh, we left early. You were working, right? Mom figured you'd be too tired for the drive. She said it'd be easier this way." I didn't respond. My throat felt like it had closed in. He added, "I think she left a note or something." There was no note. I sat in the foyer, coat still on, staring at the empty hallway. My own family had gone on the trip I paid for without me. I wasn't angry, not yet. The next morning, I called Silver Pines to cancel the room under my name. A polite woman with a sweet voice said, "Ms. Bennett?" But Catherine Bennett already checked in, upgraded to the grand suite with the same card used for the reservation. "Shall I speak with her?" I hung up. And for the first time in years, I laughed. Not a joyful laugh, the kind that escapes when the weight of disbelief is too heavy to cry. Ethan found me curled up on the couch later that evening, still in my work clothes, staring blankly at the ceiling. He sat beside me, handed me a cup of warm tea. "You need to stop doing this," he whispered. I thought, maybe this time. They don't care, Liv. He didn't say it to be cruel, just honest. The kind of honesty I'd been avoiding all my life, and yet I still wasn't ready to let go. But something shifted that week. When they came back tanned, smiling, full of stories they didn't think I wanted to hear, I didn't ask questions. I didn't confront. I watched. I noticed Victor using my laptop when I wasn't around. I noticed my credit card alert pinging for transactions I didn't make. I noticed an email in my spam folder from a private Swiss bank. And I noticed how the pictures from their trip didn't have me missing, because I was never meant to be there in the first place. That was when the silence inside me stopped being a refuge. It became a warning. That night, I didn't sleep. Not really. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, counting the cracks in the plaster I'd always meant to patch. The house was too quiet. No wind outside, no creaking floorboards. Just the hum of the radiator and the occasional drip from the faucet in the bathroom down the hall, like a slow, steady metronome marking the rhythm of disappointment. Ethan stayed over. He'd fallen asleep on the couch with a book still in his hand. I could hear his breath, soft and even, a kind of peace I couldn't access yet. I envied him for that. In the darkness, my mind ran circles. I kept replaying the phone call with Nathan. The tone he used, casual, almost bored, like he was discussing the weather, not the fact that they had left me behind, like I didn't matter enough to even warrant discomfort. And Mom? She didn't even text. Not a single word. I wasn't angry. Not in the way people expect. It was something quieter, heavier. The kind of sadness that didn't cry, didn't scream, just sat there in your chest like an anchor. But even as that weight pulled me down, something else began to stir. Not rage, not revenge, just clarity. I woke up before sunrise and made coffee, trying not to wake Ethan. The machine hissed and sputtered like always. I opened my laptop, more out of habit than intent. Work could usually distract me, but not this time. My inbox was cluttered with end-of-year reports, automated dashboards, holiday emails from vendors. I scrolled without reading, half listening to the silence, until something caught my eye, a notification from my bank. New transaction, $3,200, Silver Pines Lodge. It wasn't new. It was just confirmation of what I already knew. They had used my money, my generosity, my hope, and turned it into their luxury. I checked the details. The booking was upgraded, extended, and splurged with add-ons, champagne service, spa packages, ski lessons. The name on the bill, Catherine Bennett. I had paid for my own exclusion. That was the moment the laughter came. Quiet, breathless, cruel. I put a hand over my mouth to stifle it, afraid I'd wake Ethan. But I couldn't stop. It was funny, in a sad, tragic kind of way. How predictable it had all become. The lies, the disregard, the entitlement. What shocked me wasn't what they did. What shocked me was how long I had let it happen. Later that day, I got a text from Mom. "We'll be back Friday. Hope you had a restful week. Love, Mom." Restful. It was like she had dropped a coin into a wishing well and walked away, never looking down to see if anything echoed back. I didn't respond. Instead, I sat at my desk and opened a blank document. Not to write anything in particular. I just wanted to stare at the emptiness of it. A screen that had no expectations of me, no judgment, no demands. A space I could fill with something that was mine. That's when I noticed it. The bookmarks on my browser were rearranged. Nothing obvious, just wrong. One folder had been renamed. A file I'd been working on was open, even though I hadn't touched it since last week. I froze. I checked the login history. Someone had accessed my computer 2 days ago while I was at the office. Victor. He always had excuses to borrow my workspace when the Wi-Fi upstairs was too weak. I never thought much of it, until now. A familiar cold crept down my spine. I opened my financial dashboard. Most of it looked normal, until I dug into the Archived Accounts tab I rarely used. There, hidden beneath legitimate reports, were folders labeled with random strings of numbers. I clicked through, pulse quickening. Shell corporations, wire transfers. Some documents had my name, my real name, tied to accounts I'd never seen before. And one of them? It was flagged with a suspicious activity report. From Switzerland. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Had Victor? No, I couldn't jump to conclusions. Not yet. But the seeds had been planted. A part of me, the analyst, the pattern seeker, couldn't unsee what I'd found. Later that evening, I watched my family return from their trip. I didn't speak. I didn't smile. I just observed, like a stranger watching a play where the actors didn't know they were being watched. Mom carried herself like royalty, as always. Victor looked amused, smug. Nathan tossed his bag on the couch and asked what was for dinner. No one asked how I'd been. No one said thank you. No one even pretended to care. Something cracked, quietly, beneath my skin. Not anger, not revenge, resolve. The kind that doesn't make noise. The kind that just begins, like a fuse, silently burning its way toward something explosive. I didn't tell anyone about what I found. Not Ethan. Not my best friend Claire. Definitely not my family. There's a strange kind of power in silence. Not the weak, wounded kind I used to live in, but something colder, sharper. The kind that watches, waits, calculates. That week, I went to work like usual. Nodded at the barista at the corner cafe, sent in reports, joined Zoom meetings. I smiled, laughed even. But beneath the performance, something in me had turned. Something was watching, hunting. I started digging into the folder I'd found on my laptop, the one hidden behind random labels, buried in my archived directories. It looked like a mistake, like clutter. But I know patterns. And this wasn't clutter, it was deliberate. Multiple folders, different dates, same metadata signature. Each one had variations of my name on invoices. My email address linked to dummy corporations. Transfers between accounts I'd never opened. One entity in the Caymans, another in Zurich, a holding company in Singapore, all signed off with an IP address traced to our house. And just like that, the game began. I took my time. Nights, mostly. Ethan knew something was off. I could feel his eyes on me from across the living room while I stared at spreadsheets in the dark, but he didn't press. Not yet. I ordered a separate encrypted drive, backed everything up. I called in a favor from a former cybersecurity client, just enough to trace the digital trail without raising flags. One night, while going through a cache of deleted emails recovered from an auto backup Victor had clearly forgotten existed, I found a file that chilled me. Subject line: "Keep Olivia out of this." It was from Victor, sent months ago to an unknown contact, encrypted. But the preview line said enough. He was using my identity. I sat frozen, staring at those words. Not just because of what they meant, but because of what they confirmed. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't imagining things. He was laundering money. Through me. At that point, everything became glass. I couldn't walk through a room without seeing how fake it all was. The framed family photos, the laughter at dinner, the way Catherine would tell people how generous I'd always been. Of course I was generous. I paid for everything willingly, ignorantly. I thought I was holding the family together, but they were just holding me in place. The next day, I drove to a little coffee shop in Cambridge and waited for someone I hadn't seen in over a year, Mia Sullivan. We had met during a financial data leak case 2 years ago. She was the journalist digging through it, and I had been her data consultant. We weren't exactly friends, but we respected each other. She was smart, unapologetic, the kind of woman who could sniff out rot beneath perfume and pearls. When she walked in, she didn't say hello. She just sat down and said, "You look like someone with a secret." I smiled. "You look like someone who wants to hear one." I told her everything. Not all at once, just enough. Enough to make her lean forward, eyes narrowed, mouth tight. I showed her the folder, the false accounts, the suspicious transfers. When I finished, she said nothing for a long time. Then, "Your stepfather's going to burn for this." I shook my head. "He won't. Not if I go to the police now. He's careful. This has been going on for years. I don't even know how deep it goes. You want to build a case. I want the truth. And I want it loud." She nodded slowly, the way people do when they feel the gravity of what's in front of them. "Then you're going to need time, and you're going to need to be smart." "I am smart," I said quietly. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was defending myself. I felt like I was stating a fact. That night, when I got home, I sat across from Victor at the dining table. He was sipping scotch, reading the Wall Street Journal like always. Catherine was upstairs. Nathan was out. He looked up at me with that familiar half smile. "You're quiet lately." I tilted my head. "Just tired. He nodded. You should get more rest. You're always doing too much. I held his gaze. Yeah, I said. That's what everyone keeps saying. Inside, I was steady, calm. But something else was there too. Something electric, coiled just beneath the surface. He had no idea. He thought he was still in control. He had no idea who I was becoming. I hadn't looked at my father's things in years. After the funeral, I packed most of them into boxes and kept only a few. A leather-bound journal, his old watch, a silver fountain pen with blue ink stains on the nib. I told myself it was enough, that the rest didn't matter, that closure came from moving forward. I was wrong. It was Mia who asked. We were going through financial records in her apartment, late again, surrounded by takeout boxes and sticky notes on every flat surface. She looked up from a bank transfer document and said, "When was the last time you checked your dad's files? Anything on his computer?" My heart tightened. I haven't touched it. I didn't even know if the drive still works. Then it's time. That night, I drove to the attic storage unit I hadn't opened in years. The door creaked, the light flickered, and the dust smelled like memory. His laptop was still there, wrapped in a worn wool scarf that smelled faintly of aftershave. I held it for a long moment before powering it up. To my surprise, it turned on. I typed the password, his favorite jazz album, and the screen blinked awake. It felt like stepping into a ghost's mind. There were old notes, drafts of speeches, tax records. But one folder stood out. It was named V. Inside were scanned documents, letters, screenshots of bank statements, internal memos from a company I didn't recognize, Altros Holdings, and then a recording, audio only, dated 2 weeks before he died. My father's voice came through, shaky, rushed. If you're hearing this, it means I'm right. Victor is hiding something, off-book accounts, cash movements tied to shell firms in Zurich and Belize. He's laundering through clients. If I go to the board now without proof, he'll bury me. But I'm working on it. I just need time. My hands trembled. The screen blurred. The file ended with silence. Then static. He knew. He knew before he died. And he'd been scared. I backed everything up and sent a copy to Mia. Within an hour, she had confirmed. Altros Holdings was a legitimate firm, or had been, until it quietly dissolved 5 years ago, just after my father's death. Its CEO? A silent partner named VC Holdings. VC. Victor Charles. I stared at the screen. The man married to my mother. The man who drank scotch like water and told me I worked too hard. The man who had taken my father's place at our table. He didn't just exploit me. He had destroyed my father. Quietly. Cleanly. And no one had noticed. I thought about the accident. It had rained that night. Slick roads, car slid off the bridge, no witnesses. Nothing suspicious, they said. But what if that's what he wanted? Suddenly, the grief I had buried for years came back. But it wasn't the same. It wasn't numb or quiet. It was sharp, wild, alive. He killed my father. Not necessarily with his hands, maybe not directly, but he orchestrated the fall. And now he was using me to keep it going. I closed the laptop slowly. I wasn't scared. Not anymore. I was furious. We didn't go to the police, not yet. That was Mia's call, and I agreed. We needed more. What we had could easily be buried, swept under a legal technicality, or crushed under Victor's money and influence. If we moved too soon, we'd lose everything. So we stayed quiet, strategic, like surgeons before a cut. Mia worked contacts at a whistleblower protection group. I pulled spreadsheets, databases, timelines, quietly, methodically. We stored everything on 3 separate drives, hidden in places no one would think to check. One in Mia's freezer, one in the false bottom of my closet, the last in a safety deposit box under Ethan's name. Paranoia wasn't paranoia anymore. It was protocol. I stopped speaking to my family unless absolutely necessary. When I did, it was short, cordial, distant, just enough to maintain the illusion that I was still Olivia the agreeable. Olivia the provider. But Victor noticed. It started with small things. a sideways glance at dinner, a question that sounded innocent but wasn't. "You've been working late," he said one evening, slicing into his steak. I didn't look up. "End of quarter, reporting season." He nodded, chewing slowly. "Still, don't burn out. You do too much." Catherine chimed in with a smile. "You know your father always said that Olivia's heart is bigger than her body." Victor chuckled, but his eyes didn't leave mine. He was testing me. That night, I replaced my laptop, transferred everything to an encrypted system with multi-layered VPNs. I checked the doors twice before sleeping. I began to feel the air tighten in the house, like the walls were leaning in. One morning, I found a note slipped into the side of my briefcase. It was handwritten. Block letters. "You're not as quiet as you think." No name, no signature, no direct threat, just presence. I didn't show it to Ethan. I didn't even tell Mia until days later, when we met in the back corner of an old university library. It was the only place left that didn't feel like it was watching us. Mia read the note, her expression unreadable. "This isn't just intimidation. This is surveillance. He knows you're digging." "I know." She folded the paper, pocketed it. "Then we need to move faster." We started tracking not just accounts, but people. Associates of Victor's, shell company directors. I ran financial traces across public company data. Mia cross-referenced names with known offshore leaks. That's when the name appeared. Dante Merrill. He was listed as a board member on one of the smaller firms tied to Victor. But he wasn't a real person. No social, no license, no medical records. Just a digital ghost. Mia's contact at an international bank confirmed. Dante Merrill had been used in multiple offshore deals, flagged for potential money laundering, most originating from companies that no longer existed. And then something I hadn't expected. One of those transfers, over $1.5 million, had passed through an account linked not just to me, but to Nathan. I sat back in my chair, breath caught in my throat. Nathan? No. He was careless, entitled, emotionally stunted, but not criminal. Was he? Or had he been manipulated like me? I didn't want to believe it. But when I checked deeper, it became clear. Nathan had been listed as chief financial advisor on 2 of the dummy firms. His digital signature was on at least 3 internal memos, one of which had an attachment of forged financial statements signed in my name. It wasn't just Victor. My own brother had been part of it. Whether he knew the full scope or not, he was in it. I remember standing in the middle of my apartment that night, just standing. Not moving, not crying, just absorbing the weight of it. The betrayal wasn't sharp. It was slow, thick, like wading through tar. I had spent my life protecting Nathan, cleaning up his mistakes, covering for his debt. And now he was helping Victor bury me under the wreckage of their greed. For a moment, I felt nothing. Then I opened a new file. Timeline, Nathan's involvement, evidence, connections. He was family. But now, he was also a variable, and variables need to be tracked. I've always believed that when people feel cornered, they get louder, violent even. They lash out because they have nothing left to lose. But Victor wasn't that kind of man. He didn't corner you. He led you gently into believing the corner was your own idea. The first real hit didn't come as a threat. It came as an email from HR. "Olivia, we've received a formal report regarding the misuse of internal data systems for personal purposes. Please be advised that a review will be conducted this week. Do not delete or alter any files. Compliance will be expected." At first, I couldn't breathe. The company? My job? This wasn't just a warning. It was a scalpel pressed to the one place I still had autonomy. I called Mia. "He's coming at me from the inside now." "He's trying to discredit you," she said. "Kill your credibility before you go public. Classic move." I sat in my car outside the office, engine off, hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me in this world. I looked up at the glass building that housed my career, my identity, and I realized something brutal. He knew where I lived in every way that mattered. That week, I was frozen out of several internal systems. My access was under review. Colleagues stopped saying good morning. My manager wouldn't meet my eyes in the hallway. Rumors moved faster than facts ever could. Victor had planted doubt, and where doubt bloomed, silence always followed. That Friday, as I left the office, I found Ethan waiting by the curb. He looked worried. He didn't speak right away, just opened the door for me like it was a shield, not a gesture. When we got home, he sat me down. "There's something I need to ask you," he said, "and I need you to tell me the truth." I stiffened. "Okay. Have you been doing something illegal? I mean, are you in trouble?" I stared at him, not because the question surprised me, but because of the look in his eyes. That flicker of fear, not for me, but of me. Victor had reached him too. I wanted to scream, to throw something. Instead, I leaned back and said, as calmly as I could, "No, but if I don't do something soon, I will be." He rubbed his face, exhausted. "Olivia, I love you, but I don't understand what's happening anymore. You're shutting me out." "I'm protecting you." "From what?" "From who?" I didn't say Victor's name, not yet. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak in the floorboards felt like a presence. Every car that passed outside made me tense. I checked the locks, then checked them again. Victor didn't need to hurt me. He just needed me to feel like I was unraveling. Alone, unstable, doubtful. And the worst part? It was working. I began to question every decision. Was I really being watched or paranoid? Were the financial links airtight or built on confirmation bias? One night, I found myself staring into the bathroom mirror, whispering, "Am I losing it?" Then my phone vibrated. A single text, no number, just a blank contact. "Let it go. You won't survive this." No punctuation, no threats, just a truth stated plainly. I didn't show it to Ethan. I didn't even screenshot it. I deleted it. Then turned off my phone, sat on the floor, and cried. Not loud, not broken, just quiet tears, like something soft inside me was leaking out. The next morning I woke up different. Not stronger, not wiser, just resolved. Victor had taken enough. My family had taken enough. Doubt had taken enough. And I still had the truth, even if no one believed me yet. There's a point where fear stops working. When your name is already tainted, your reputation questioned, and your reality twisted just enough to make you doubt your own memory, fear becomes useless. I wasn't fearless. I was simply done being afraid. Mia called on a Thursday evening. Her voice was calm, clipped. "There's a leak opportunity, a contact at Global Finance Wire, but we'd have to go on record. Not by name, but close." I didn't hesitate. "Send it." She paused. "Liv, once we go down this path, it's real. There's no unseeing it, no undoing it. You'll be a threat, not just a nuisance." I exhaled slowly. "I already am." We curated the package. Partial documents, masked metadata, redacted names, just enough to crack the surface, not enough to incriminate me. A breadcrumb, nothing more. A whisper into the chaos. We called it The Pattern. A quiet article tucked beneath headlines about market volatility and cryptocurrency crashes. But it hit, because someone was watching. Within 24 hours, the story was picked up by 2 more investigative blogs. One analyst on LinkedIn called it the ghost trail of modern corporate laundering. A Reddit thread with over 1,000 comments tried connecting the shell firms. And then came the email. Not from Victor, from a former employee at Altros Holdings. The subject line read, "I saw this coming." His name was Ian Moreno. He had handled overseas reporting for Altros before it dissolved. The message was careful, cautious. He didn't know the full scope, he claimed, but he had been ordered to process irregular transfers shortly before the company shut down. He said he'd always suspected internal fraud, but after the firm disappeared, he stayed quiet until now. I met him in a crowded food court, of all places. Fluorescent lights, the hum of vending machines. I chose the location because it felt absurdly normal, almost theatrical in its banality. Ian was in his early 40s, weary, looked over his shoulder twice before sitting down. He brought a printed ledger old school and pointed to one name. Catherine Bennett, my mother. She had authorized the transfers. Not Victor. Not Nathan. Her. I felt the floor tilt slightly. Ian leaned in, lowering his voice. Whoever was behind the network didn't just want to move money, they wanted to hide power. And your mother, she wasn't just a passive player. She signed things. She knew. My hands were shaking under the table. I'd always known she was cold, that she chose control over affection, but I had never imagined she was complicit. Complicit in the laundering, complicit in the cover-up, possibly even in what happened to my father. I thanked Ian, took the ledger, and left. In the car, I sat still for 20 minutes, gripping the steering wheel, breathing shallow. I called Mia, told her everything. She was silent for a long beat. "Then she's more dangerous than Victor," she finally said. I whispered, "She always has been. I just never let myself see it." That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at a hotel under an alias. Ethan called twice. I didn't answer. I needed distance. Not from him. From everyone. From the life I thought I understood. Because the story had changed. This wasn't about stolen money anymore. It was about identity. It was about legacy. It was about betrayal so precise, so premeditated, it felt architectural. My family didn't just fail me. They built a house out of my name and locked me in the basement. But now, I was holding the blueprint. And I was ready to light a match. The moment came on a Sunday afternoon. Quiet, ordinary. Cold sunlight slipping through the living room windows like it had every other weekend. The house smelled of rosemary and lemon. Mom was making roast chicken, like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't built an empire of lies with my name stitched into the foundation. Victor was there too, seated in his usual chair, glass of scotch in hand, flipping through the Financial Times like it still mattered. And I was standing, in the middle of the room, a USB drive in one hand, and every reason to destroy the people in front of me in the other. "I know what you did," I said. Calm, not shaking, not loud, just final. Catherine looked up from the kitchen island, face unreadable. "Excuse me?" I turned to Victor. "You used my name, my accounts, my credentials." He didn't blink. "Olivia. And you." I turned back to her. "You signed transfers from Altros, authorized transactions, helped dissolve the shell corporations before Dad even had a chance to expose them." Silence. Just the tick of the wall clock. Then Catherine slowly wiped her hands with a dish towel, walked over, stopped a few feet from me. Her expression didn't change. "You've always been dramatic." I smiled. "And you've always underestimated me." Victor stood carefully, measured, like he was talking to a wild animal. "What exactly do you think you have?" "Everything," I said. "Ledgers, signed documents, voice recordings, witnesses, digital trails, and a journalist who already published the first breadcrumb." Catherine's jaw clenched for the first time. Victor's calm cracked ever so slightly, but still no denial. That told me everything. They weren't shocked I'd found the truth. They were shocked I had the spine to use it. And then she said it. Catherine, my mother. "I did what I had to do to protect this family." I felt something split inside me. She didn't deny the crimes, she justified them. Like love was measured in dollar signs and offshore accounts. Like destroying my father's legacy, stealing my identity and turning me into a pawn was somehow noble. "He trusted you," I said. "Dad, he knew something was wrong, and he still believed you'd never be part of it." Her eyes didn't waver. "Your father was naive, too sentimental, and now you're doing the same thing." I stepped back. My throat burned. "You're wrong," I whispered. "Sentiment is what stopped me from burning this house down years ago." I dropped the USB on the coffee table between them. "Take it," I said. "Destroy it. Deny everything. It won't matter. There are 3 more copies. Mia has one. A lawyer has another. The third is with someone none of you know." Victor took a step forward, but I raised a hand. "If anything happens to me, even a car brake that squeals wrong, a gas leak, a late-night visitor, everything goes public. Everything. Your faces, your names, your entire dirty legacy." He stopped. We stared at each other. No more masks, just quiet recognition. Then I turned to leave. Catherine called after me, voice low, cold. "You'll regret this, Olivia." I paused at the door. "No," I said. "I regret not doing it sooner." And I walked out. I didn't go back to that house, didn't answer Nathan's calls, didn't check the bank account that had once tied me to them like an umbilical cord of guilt. I met Mia 2 days later, handed her the last pieces. We built the final report together. No press releases yet, just slow leaks, measured exposure, enough to force action without tipping hands. A week after that, Victor was taken in for questioning, then Catherine, and then finally, Nathan, whose digital fingerprints were all over the forged documents. I watched the headlines alone, curled in the corner of Ethan's couch, a blanket around my shoulders. His hand rested on mine. He didn't ask questions anymore. He just stayed. We didn't celebrate. There was no champagne, no cinematic closure, just a long, exhale-shaped silence. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with fireworks or applause or grand epiphanies. It slips in quietly, like light under a closed door. The week after the arrests, I slept more than I had in years. I didn't dream. I didn't cry. I just rested, as if every cell in my body had finally stopped bracing for impact. I moved out of the apartment and into a small cottage in Vermont that Ethan and I had quietly bought months earlier. Back then, it had been a someday house, a place we joked about growing tomatoes and adopting too many cats. Now it was real. We didn't talk much those first few days. There was nothing to explain. Ethan had seen the wreckage. He knew better than to try to sweep it into something clean. Instead, we painted the walls together, a soft sage green. We replaced the old sink. We built bookshelves, not because we needed them, but because it felt good to make something that wasn't falling apart. And I started to write. Not about them, not at first. I wrote about silence, about the way grief can wear your face like a mask, about how betrayal isn't always loud, it's often just neglect, stretched over years like a skin you forget you're wearing. I wrote for no one but myself. But the words kept coming. Mia called occasionally. The case was still developing. More names, more companies. The DA had opened a broader investigation. Victor was fighting it. Catherine had gone quiet. Nathan? I didn't ask. I didn't need closure. Not anymore. What I needed was distance. Not measured in miles, but in mindset. One evening, I stood on the back porch, a mug of tea warming my hands. The trees were bare, branches sketching soft lines against the violet dusk. Somewhere in the distance, a fox cried out, lonely and sharp. And I realized something I hadn't dared to admit before. I wasn't broken. I had been bent, shaped, forced into contortions that never fit me. But I'd straightened, on my own, with no apology. Ethan stepped outside, wrapped an arm around me. "What are you thinking?" he asked. I took a sip of tea, smiled faintly. "I think I'm finally done trying to prove I belong to people who never wanted me whole." He didn't say anything. He didn't need to, because for the first time in my life, I didn't need permission to be free. I didn't write the memoir for revenge. I wrote it to remember. Not the facts, I had those. Dates, numbers, names, evidence. But the feelings. What it meant to hand over pieces of yourself, year after year, to people who called it love. What it meant to be loyal to those who would leave you behind without hesitation. What it meant to finally, quietly, say, enough. The book took 6 months. It wasn't neat. It wasn't polished. It was honest. I called it The Quiet Exit. The publisher asked if I wanted to include real names. I declined. Not because they didn't deserve it, but because the names were never the story. The story was survival. The story was mine. When the book came out, it didn't become a bestseller overnight. There was no viral moment, no movie deal, no glamorous book tour. But it reached the people it needed to. Emails began to come in. From women. From men. From sons and daughters who had played the role of emotional caretaker, financial rescuer, sacrificial lambs in families that wore dysfunction like tradition. They wrote, "I see myself in your story. You helped me put words to something I felt for years. I didn't know I was allowed to walk away. I cried when I read those, not because I felt important, but because I felt useful. It's strange how healing doesn't come from closure, but from contribution. From knowing the pain you carried wasn't wasted, that it fed something better. A year passed. Victor pled guilty in exchange for a reduced sentence. Catherine's case dragged, but the public pressure never let up. Nathan disappeared from the press. Rumor had it he'd left the country. I didn't care enough to confirm. I no longer felt the need to follow their stories. They were no longer part of mine. Ethan and I still lived in the cottage. We planted tomatoes that spring, just like we joked about. I started teaching part-time at a community college data analytics, storytelling with numbers. Strange how full circle that felt. Sometimes when I'm alone on the porch, I think about my father. Not the way he died, but the way he lived. The way he smiled when I got my first internship. The way he taught me to use a compass, even though we were in a city full of GPS signals. "Trust your own sense of direction," he said. It took me a long time to understand he wasn't talking about maps. And now? Now I know where I'm going. Not away from the past, but forward, without shame, without fear, without apology. I am no longer someone's daughter, someone's savior, someone's scapegoat. I am Olivia Bennett, and I found my way out of the fire, not by running, but by walking calmly, steadily through it.